This story is sort of a continuation of my previous story, Family Connections. I had talked about some very similar but separate experiences that my grandmother, her brother, and my mother had all had about 30-40 years ago. I am sort of remembering things from my childhood as I write these stories, so I will share at least one that I remember vividly. But the main point of sharing this time is to let everyone know some of my sister's experiences. When I was about 5 or 6, we were in the process of building a house. We had been living in Louisiana when my sister was born and moved back when she was probably about a year old. We lived in an apartment that my great-grandmother rented out, then we rented a smaller house for a little while before buying the property that my parents were going to build their house on. After we bought the land, we moved in with my grandparents, Mom's parents. My sister is about 2 years younger than me, so all this moving and renting took place over about 2-3 years, give or take, so she was about 3 or 4 during this time. I think we lived with my grandparents close to a year or so while we built the house. During this time, we stayed in their basement. Just to give a brief description of the house, when you walk in the front door you're in an open foyer with an open living room to the left and the doorway to the kitchen on the right. Directly in front of you are 2 sets of stairs, one going upstairs and one going downstairs, similar to a split level, just a little more room in the foyer than some I have been in. When you walk downstairs to the basement there is a hallway. On the right at the very end is a full bathroom and perpendicular to the door going into the bathroom is a small bedroom. At the very end on the opposite side is a larger room that my parents used as their bedroom. At the time were double glass sliding doors that went out into the backyard. My sister and I shared the smaller bedroom and we had a full-size bed and a twin bed in there, so we got to sleep in our own beds. This only happened a couple of times to me, but I woke up one morning and saw people standing around my bed. They were dressed in what we would call black tie attire and were all talking to each other, like they were at a party. The only one I remember clearly was a woman with dark hair wearing a red dress. I wasn't afraid, in fact, I thought it was pretty neat that I got to see them. I told my mom about it, but I don't remember what she said about it. It must not have been that important, especially when I told her I wasn't afraid. But that was it. Like I said, it only happened once or twice that I remember. Now, my sister's experiences are a little more strange than mine. We moved into our house and nothing unusual happened that I recall. So flash forward about 3 or 4 years. We were moving, again. This time, we had bought a chicken farm with a house already on it. I was about 9 and my sister was about 7. The house and property were both not very well taken care of. The couple we bought it from were both older and the wife was in poor health. She was also pretty close to being a hoarder. She didn't throw anything away, she didn't keep things very clean, and I think the husband was just tired so he didn't do a whole lot on the property to keep it clean or anything. Needless to say, this house was absolutely filthy when we moved in. My sister and I were so afraid to sleep by ourselves for the first couple of weeks so we slept on a mattress in my parents' bedroom. We eventually graduated to a hideaway bed in the living room. I'm not exactly sure why we were scared. I think maybe just because it was a new house, we weren't able to move a lot of our furniture in for a couple of months because this woman pretty much refused to get her stuff out of there, and it was just dirty. Finally, we start getting settled in and moved our furniture in and were actually able to sleep in our own rooms. This house was long, and mine and my sister's bedrooms were on the opposite side of the house than my parents' room. Mine and my sister's rooms were directly across the hall from each other, so we would lay in bed and talk across the hall at night sometimes. I don't really know the exact time or age, maybe about a year or 2 after we had been living there. We were when this started, but my sister, we'll call her Mel, yelled for my parents to come to her room one night. This was when we actually had a bedtime and went to bed early and my parents stayed up for a little bit. Miserable childhood lol. My parents were in the living room, which was down the hall from our rooms, so not hard to hear us. Of course by this time I'm awake and I'm pretty nosy so I went in her room too. She told us that there was a man standing at the end of her bed. She said he was very tall and was wearing a long robe and had a long sword that he was holding straight up and down in front of him. It sounded to me like someone who was holding a sword and keeping watch, if that makes sense. Neither I nor my parents could see him, but she kept insisting that he was there, even when we were in the room with her. She told us she wasn't scared, so my parents told her maybe it was her guardian angel. And that was that. She never really talked about him much, but I think she saw him in her room for a while after that. Around this same time, or maybe even a year after she first saw her guardian angel, Mel started telling me that sometimes at night she would hear people whispering and talking to each other. She couldn't understand what they were saying, but she said they would start hissing at each other and eventually the whole conversation would end with a loud scream. She said this happened a lot and she eventually told my mom about it. Mom wasn't sure what to say, so she just told her to pray when she heard the noises. Mel didn't say much about this again after that, but I think she heard things for a while, too. We lived there for about 12 years, and there were a couple of other things that happened that couldn't really be explained, but that's another story. In all the time we did live there, I don't think that I experienced anything like that. I don't remember seeing anything, but I did hear some things. But that's another story, too. I think this is way too long as it is.